A Fox News alert, the Senate scrambling as the clock ticks to avoid a partial government shutdown at midnight tonight. A live look at the Senate floor where Republicans are attempting to move forward on a procedural vote, but it's unclear if they have the numbers to go forward. Over at the White House, the president trying to place the potential blame at Democrats' feet.
It's really up to the Democrats, totally up to the Democrats as to whether or not we have a shutdown. I hope we don't, but we're totally prepared for a very long shutdown. And this is our only chance that we'll ever have, in our opinion, because of the world and the way it breaks out, to get great border security.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying Trump would be at fault and Democrats will not be budging on any extra funding for the border wall.
President Trump, you will not get your wall. Abandon your shutdown strategy. You're not getting the wall today, next week, or on January 3rd when Democrats take control of the House.
Jesse, everybody's kind of figure out what's the end game here. How does the president play out the strategy? What do you think?
I don't see the end game, Juan. I really don't. I mean, if he has a bill that gets to his desk and it doesn't have wall funding, he vetoes it or he signs it and he says, I tried. But if he vetoes it, it just goes back and then everything gets shut down. And then maybe it's shut down for a week at most, and then the Democrats come in and take over, and they never send him anything with any wall funding, and you're back to square one. So I don't see the end game. I guess maybe he's just trying to signal to the people that he's going to fight, but he has to find more creative ways in the budget to build this wall. The wall has to be built, and that's his signature promise. And he wasted the first time with it, and McConnell didn't deliver the first opportunity, and it's a shame. But if they get rid of the filibuster, which they won't, you could get a wall. You could get a lot of stuff. The other side would get stuff. This side would get stuff. But the way that the system's designed in the Senate, 60 votes for these spending bills, you're never going to get what you want. And they're just going to use the shutdown as leverage time and time again. And then we have to talk about how boring it is.
So, Dana, let's not talk about it's boring, because, in fact, it's a hot issue in public opinion. Quinnipiac has a poll out, 54-43. No need for a wall. 62% of Americans opposed to a shutdown. But among Republicans, 59-33 say yes to the wall.
Right, but also I would imagine that 60% of Democrats say...
Oh, it's more than
right,
that.
I mean,
yeah.
it's the same. So it's quite partisan. Yeah. I thought that the language that Ted Cruz used earlier today was interesting. I think you'll hear more of it coming from Republicans, that the Democrats are extreme and they're partisan, and that the president is the one who is middle of the road on this and commonsensical. Some of them pointing back to February, though. Remember when the president had the cameras in and it was in the cabinet room and it was that most amazing meeting that anyone ever seen? That deal at the time would have given like $25 billion, plus it had the DACA fix. So it's like you keep going back like, gosh, maybe that was the deal that they should have had and taken back then. But the Democrats are so dug in on saying no that I just read that Brian Schatz, the senator from Hawaii, he had left. It's an 11-hour flight to Hawaii. Yeah. He flew back 11 hours just to vote no. So everyone is quite dug in.
You know, Greg, I know that your position is, things happen, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but so
that is my position, Juan. My position. Things happen. That's the name of my new show on right? Fox Nation. Things happen.
Things happen. But it's making a lot of people on conservative talk radio, the Ann Coulters, the Rush Limbaughs, right? They're like, what are you doing? You can't allow the Democrats to win.
Right.
What would Greg Gutfeld advise President Trump to do?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say that
he's watching.
I know. Well, no, you know what? Okay, here's when I listen to this, I find this to be very foolish. It reminds me, and I hate to use this, the Yanni or Laurel thing. Yeah. Remember that?
Yeah.
So
it was blue.
Trump has managed to get Democrats to agree that having a strong border is important, because whenever they get in the conversation, all the Democrats, including you, Juan, have said it. I want a strong border. Everybody's saying this. So he gets everybody saying it. Then he goes, okay, a wall. And they go, no, not a wall. So it's both sides agree, but the Democrats are hung up on language. They are hung up on language because it's the word. It's the word wall. So might I quote somebody?
Scott.
Yes, Scott Adams. Why not adjust the language? If it's a wall or if it's a fence, who cares? Call it a wence. right? That's a Scott Adams.
President Trump wants people to call it steel slats.
Well, this is amazing to me. Steel slats sounds fantastic to me. That sounds like something pretty cool. You can move it around. But, you know, Democrats will say that this is the wrong way to cut immigration, right? Because most of the illegal immigration is overstayed visas, right? Yeah. That's like saying I don't like a fork because it won't cut my meat. Well, you have a knife for that. So you have a fork and a knife. So you can have a wall, strong border, and then you could address that other stuff. So the arguments are either emotional, flawed, or pig-headed. When everybody wants the same thing, but they won't give in.
So, Jedediah, if we do have a shutdown at midnight, you're going to see, I think it's 800,000 federal workers. You know, 47% of them will not even come to work. The rest come to work. They won't be paid until the government reopens.
At which point they'll get their back pay.
Right, but then you have federal contractors out of work, too. The State Department says they'll keep doing visas. Restrooms, some of the federal parks are going to be closed. What do you think is going to be the reaction?
Well, I think from the right, I mean, people got very nervous when they thought he wasn't going to dig his heels in, when he kind of wavered for a second and they thought, oh, he said he wouldn't be afraid to shut the government down. Now he is afraid. I think he's already done what he needs to do. Regardless of how this works out, he's now going to be the guy who was willing to go through with the government shutdown to dig his heels in and say, I'm willing to do that partial government shutdown. He's also proving that he's willing to take on the language and say, this is a Democrat shutdown. He's taken on the language when it comes to what a shutdown actually looks like, that it's not this, you know, Armageddon that the left always paints it as, that so many essential government functions still keep working. I just think it's interesting. I watched Chuck Schumer, and he says, you're not going to get your wall, as if the wall is for President Trump. The wall is for the United States of America. It's for our national security. It's to address the humanitarian crisis at the border. We're talking about resources for Border Patrol agents. You just had a little girl die crossing in horrific conditions. So this idea that he's not giving him the money to spite Trump, you're not spiting Trump. You're spiting American citizens, and you're spiting all of those poor people who are being incentivized to come and cross this border under these horrific conditions. So I think Democrats should take a minute and really reflect on that. And I know it sounds good to oppose the wall, but think about what you're actually opposing, which is addressing national security and the humanitarian crisis that's happening at the border. So I think he's already done a lot of what he had to do.
So, Jedediah, you are so lucky. It's like Santa delivered for you because you got a Democrat at the table. So I would say to you, hey, Jedediah, I think President Trump said Mexico's going to pay for the wall.
Yeah, well, and, you know, I said a million times he should have never been on record saying that because it was highly unlikely that that was going to happen. But the bottom line is that, I mean, you have people opening GoFundMe accounts in this country to say, you know what, if the government's not going to do it, we're going to do it. That shouldn't be the case. The primary responsibility of the government is to protect its citizens, and that includes border security.
Okay, so one final question on this for everybody. So Jesse laid out a potential endgame, a way that the president could get out of it, which is to say, look, I really did my best. I have tried with these Democrats. I even went to the point, I think Jedediah picked up on this, of saying we're going to shut down the government. Yeah. So will Rush Limbaugh, the Drudge Report, Breitbart, will people like that say, you know what, Mr. President, you did your best with those doggone Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if he goes all out and does what he can, as much as he can, and you look at Mitch McConnell or you look at the House Republicans and you say, you know what, they didn't deliver with the 2 years they had majorities, but even then you still need 60 votes. You still need 60 votes. You got to nuke it. That's what you got to do. You got a nuke option or nothing.
Hey, Greg, when he starts hammering the table,
scares me a little. Scares me a little. It does wake me up, though. You know, it is watching politicians debate over the wall is like watching Dana and I try to get something down from a high shelf because there is no expertise, right? And I think that was the mistake at the beginning of this, was not introducing expertise into this problem. Instead, it started with a price. It's like if you were going to go renovate your house, you don't say, I'm going to spend this. No, you're going to figure out what you want to renovate. Do I need a table here? Do I need a pot? And then you come up with a budget. This is, I was going to say ass backwards. Can I say that?
Yeah.
You can say it either way.
Okay. So anyway, I think what we needed is like engineering expertise, somebody that says, okay, this is what, maybe you have a wall here, maybe you don't have a wall here, and then you come up with it. But instead, we started from the reverse. So that might be a compromise.
Well, how about our public relations expert, Ms. Perino? What would you suggest?
Well, Look, I don't know how it's going to come down, but I do think that there was something that the president and his administration was able to do yesterday that got buried. It didn't get enough attention. It was actually quite impressive, very impressive. Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, announced that they have reached this deal with Mexico. Well, it's not a deal. They basically said to Mexico, they're going to basically house or hold the asylum seekers. So if you are a migrant, you come across, you get processed, but then you wait in Mexico. That's a really big deal. And the administration has done lots of different things that are a part of the whole cutlery set.
Yes.
Right? So there's a spoon, a knife, a fork, the dessert spoon, everything. They've tried to do all of
that smaller knife?
There's a lot of things that they're doing outside of the wall that could either give them some cover with their base, but also to let the American people know, like, they're not just waiting for $5 billion for steel slats for a wall. They actually, that's really impressive. And she deserves some credit for that. Of course, it got buried because of all the other breaking news.
Sure. And also, the Supreme Court had a ruling, Jedediah, that said the administration cannot put a cap on the number of people seeking asylum. It was an interesting vote because the Chief Justice, John Roberts, voted with the liberals against the administration.
Right, that is true as well. And I would also say about the dollar value, I think it's interesting there's been a lot of debate about the $5 billion. People need to remember he's not just pulling that number out of thin air. I mean, he's talking to Border Patrol agents, he's talking to the people at the border, and they're telling him this is what we need, this is what's insufficient. So, you know, Chuck Schumer doesn't get to decide what's appropriate amount of money, and frankly, neither does Donald Trump. He is working with the people on the border. So these numbers exist for a reason, because he's getting it from the people who are there, trying to process people, trying to get them in buses in these remote areas to other locations, trying to make sure that the proper medical supplies are there, and also trying to contain what's going on. So that number, there's a reason that $5 billion in terms of a monetary value even exists.
By the way, Greg, does he go to Mar-a-Lago if the government shuts down?
Well, I'll talk to him later, because actually I'm hitching a ride with him.
Is that right?
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
nice.
On his sleigh?
Well, actually, I serve drinks on the plane.
On the sleigh ride. All right.